All right, folks, I want to call the meeting to order. Thank you for being with us this evening. Having called the meeting to order, this is a regularly scheduled Greer City Council meeting called and convened this evening, July 10th, 2018. With that, we will start with our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. That will be followed by an invocation by Councilwoman Judy Albert for our council. Please join us if you'd like.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you like to join me? Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you today, so thankful for our many blessings that you have shed upon us here. We thank you for the city that we live in and for the state. We thank you for our country and the men and women serving our country. We pray that you will be with our leaders to help them make the right decisions to govern our country and bring us together as a nation. We pray your blessings to be with us this evening. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. We set aside time at the beginning of each meeting for a public forum. This is an opportunity for citizens to address issues that are relevant to our current agenda. And this evening we have got, looks like 4 people that have signed up and asked to address council in regards to items on the agenda. What I would ask is that when I call your name, if you would make your way to the podium, if you would give your name and address as a matter of record, I would appreciate that. Then the floor would be yours. I have no time limit per se. I'll only ask that you be respectful of the time that we would allow others to speak as well too. And so with that, I'm going to call Bobby Corbett to the rostrum. She will be our first. She will be our first petitioner.
Good evening. My name is Bobby Corbett, and I've lived in Greer for the last 8 years, happily residing in Chartwell Estates on Gibb Shoals, a subdivision located just down the street from some large proposed developments. Although I previously presented a commentary on the subject to the Planning Commission because I was unable to attend previous meetings in person, I wanted to have an opportunity to talk to you directly in this regard. Within the last 3 to 4 years, 5 new subdivisions have been built on Suber Road or adjacent thereto. These developments have increased the traffic flow considerably in our neighborhood, making it difficult at best to enter or exit Chartwell Estates and to get around by car throughout the area. Although I am thrilled for Greer's growth, I am concerned about how these developments will impact our lives in the future. And I want to be sure that all matters, in addition to the known financial benefits this will have for the city, have been equally considered. It goes without saying that these developments will have a profound effect on our area of the city, with overpopulation, additional infrastructure challenges, stress on schools, increased traffic problems, and a myriad of other problems. Although it has been said that considerations with regard to some of these areas have been discussed, it appears to me that the large number of units planned should have raised a red flag to the Planning Commission, the Mayor, and other government agencies that the density and size of the proposed developments must be reduced even further to make them workable in our community. I feel that all of the residents of this area deserved to and had a right to be actively involved in any decisions that were to be made in this regard, and should have been involved more openly from the onset of any discussions with the developers, the landowners, and the city before the city held their meeting on annexing these parcels to Greer. I was hopeful that our mayor and other government dignitaries would have considered the concerns voiced by its residents, kept our concerns forefront in making their decisions, and continued to keep concerned residents actively involved in their decision-making. Now it appears that that ship may have sailed, and any further considerations about the size of these developments is past. I just wanted to let our city know that I am disheartened and sad that this issue did not come to a more amicable conclusion for all concerned parties.
Phil Woods.
Name is Phil Woods, 407 Riverside Town Circle. I would like to continue with the about what Suber Road and the congestion that we have here. I don't know how much planning that went into this. We have Lowe's Foods now. We're having a new subdivision on down at 14 and Suber Road. As I look at Route 80 from 14 to Wade Hampton, I see that wonderful highway there that somebody planned ahead of time, and now businesses are just now going there. But there was somebody had business people and politicians had a lot of planning ahead of time, 10, 15, 20 years ago, to put all that in. It seems to me, not being rude, that who's ever on these committees who approve these subdivisions and growth, maybe they should contact some of those people and ask for some of their wisdom and guidance so that they can convey their intelligence on how they arrived to put the road in before they had the businesses there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Larry Bounds.
Good evening. My name is Larry Bounds. I'm a school teacher in Greenville County. I live at 2 Hillside Glen Drive. Been there close to 20 years and served 6 of the last 7 years on the community board of Riverside Town Subdivision. When I moved there were 3 subdivisions on Suber Road. Didn't have a grocery store in the neighborhood. That's just recently been added. Lowe's food store, fabulous. I encourage everyone to shop there. It's wonderful. But in the last few years, 3 more subdivisions have been added along that stretch of Suber Road, which is a 2-lane road, hairpin turn, lots of speeding. We know because Hillside Glen has been the recipient of several cars not making that turn and flying through our fences, knocking down our trees, almost smashing into our houses. So it's not the safest road. It's a 2-lane road. It is also the only key way to get to that wonderful Lowe's supermarket, which means if there are, in fact, 1,100 units going in, fabulous, love it, love the tax base to increase, that's wonderful. But that means it's only half a mile from the corner of Gibb Shoals and Suber, where a lot of those would be, to that nearest grocery store. The other grocery stores, the Bi-Lo's, the Publix, they're all several miles away, which means I would anticipate an incredible backlog and bottleneck. Now, it is possible that everyone has figured out a mapping of that big hairpin curve to broaden it to accept that load of traffic, but it was just recently redone to make it a bit safer, and I don't know if there's any consideration of any additional improvements. If not, I do know that come school time, early in the morning and late in the afternoon, when people are getting off work going to work, we are already backing up from Old Spartanburg all the way down to the hairpin curve. Add another 1,000 homes and the 1,500, 2,000 extra people, I don't know what that's going to do. So just please consider that. Consider the neighborhood. Love to have the neighbors, but we would also like to be able to actually exit onto Suber Road and go on teaching and shopping, all those other things. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Leland Shealy.
I'm Leland Shealy, 1096 Abner Creek Road. When I moved on Abner Creek Road, it was a little narrow tar and gravel road. Then the state decided to turn it into a super highway. It appears to be a bypass truck route now with semis and 20-ton dump trucks blasting up and down it. It has a lot of hills and curves. It's really hard to see around. And that seems like it's going to be developed into a big residential area. And you see people on bicycles, and they think they can actually walk down this road and things like that. So I was just kind of wondering if, what the future holds for that, because the two things don't seem to be compatible. So, that was my question. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Council, having heard the items from public forum, we will move to the minutes of the council meeting held on June 26, 2018. I'll entertain a motion that those minutes be received.
So motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any items of note for our clerk? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Contained in your packet is your departmental reports. Information is there regarding the different departments. I'm sure the department heads or Mr. Riggers will be glad to give you any additional information that you might request. We do have the Parks and Recreation Department coming this evening to give us their activity report. Ian Cunningham has deferred to Mr. Watson tonight, so Mr. Watson will be doing the presentation. He serves as our Assistant Director for Parks and Recreation in the city of Greer, and he and Ms. Cunningham do an excellent job leading those groups of folks. We hope that our sincere appreciation was conveyed to your department as well as others for the work done during Freedom last week. We think that was extremely successful, and I know that your department played a large part in that, so thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Danner and members of council. I appreciate the opportunity tonight to present you our activity report for the month of May. I'm just going to kind of briefly go through it and hit a few highlights. Feel free to stop me at any time. I welcome any comments or questions that you may have. We start all of our monthly reports with our vision statement. You'll see it underneath the picture of our soccer club, and that is create a community through people, parks, and programs. As we move on through page 1, there are several sections highlighted in red, the first one being department highlights. Here you'll see bullets that include details about meetings that our department staff has attended, such as the Center for the Arts renovation, Downtown Streetscape Project, Cannon Concessions at Kids Planet. We met with the police department to discuss our rental policies and procedures, and also met with our planning and design staff to discuss the Kids Planet renovation. Moving on, under department participation at the bottom of page 1, you'll see our participation in Leadership Greer, where we hosted them on May 1st for the Quality of Life presentation here at City Park and Kids Planet. Our participation in Family Fest. Moving on to page 2, the third section in red that you'll see under department trainings. You'll see here where our staff attended meetings hosted by the South Carolina Parks, Recreation and Tourism, and also the Greenville County Food and Nutrition Services training for our summer camps. Under division highlights, we have each of our 5 divisions here report their highlights from the month, starting with grounds maintenance, and these are items accomplished in addition to their everyday tasks. Just a few of them are removing the ducklings from the pond down here at City Park, installing new trash cans and new landscape and plant material at Veterans Park, and also preparing Century Park for our tournaments this summer. Under athletics, the first few bullets basically summarize that we've wrapped up our fall seasons. While I have the opportunity to maybe skip ahead a little bit, I'd like to give an update on our all-star baseball teams. We had 4 teams this year that all advanced to state tournaments. First time that we've had that since we've offered baseball that we can find a record of. Our 6U team finished 2nd in the state. They completed play last weekend in West Columbia. Our 8U team completed play yesterday in Florence. They finished 4th in the state. Our 10U team is still playing, and then our 12U team will start their their state tournament next weekend. So something to be proud of there. Certainly speaks a lot for the development of our players and where our baseball club has came. Moving on to the last bullet that we have, our athletic staff attended a development meeting in Simpsonville to discuss fall flag football league. And at the time in May when we attended this, we really didn't know how it would be received. But, again, if you'll allow me to fast forward to today, we already have 12 teams registered for flag football for this year. So it's really not at the detriment of any other sports or nothing dramatic. You know, we just see a few players from baseball or tackle football or soccer that have decided to try out this new sport. So it seems to be a hit. Moving on to page 3, under our recreation division, you'll see where we installed an outdoor ping pong table at the Victor Gym or Victor Park. We hosted the second of the 4 HC50 community walks with your local elected official on May 19th. Ms. Albert was actually the official who attended that week, and we had a good turnout. We took a different route that day down through the Sunnyside community, so that was a pleasant day. We hosted the 2018 Palmetto Cutlery Knife Show on May 4th and 5th at the Tryon Recreation Center, and we wrapped up the 2018 Senior Computer Classes here at City Hall, and that's the program that we received Greenville County Redevelopment Authority subrecipient grant money for. Also, as you're moving down through recreation, you'll see a list of all of the activities that we host, including participant numbers there throughout the month. You'll see several items listed for our SOAR, or Seniors Out and Around program. Just a brief note there on our camp numbers. Victor and the Needmore camp are both full, as always. I think our Victor camp, we always offer registration to city residents for the first week. I think after that first week of registration, we only had a handful of empty spots, and those filled out first thing Monday morning. So that popular camp continues to thrive, and our staff does a wonderful job with it. At the very bottom of page 3, under Cultural Arts, you'll see details about Greer Idol auditions. They've narrowed it down to 5 contestants, and they are competing on Friday nights when weather has not intervened with their program out here. So they're kind of playing hit and miss with the weather. Moving on to page 4, you'll see where GCAC participated in Greer Family Fest. They provided princesses and villains that kind of roam throughout the festival to spread their upcoming productions and what they're doing. Cultural Arts is also involved at the Greer Farmers Market. They have a table there giving information about their upcoming plays and productions. And finally, the Freedom Blast Artwork Contest, our Cultural Arts division kind of hosted that, accepted those, and judged those. And the winner was actually the artwork that you saw displayed on the back of the Freedom Blast t-shirts this year. And then the second place submission was featured on a mural at Freedom Blast. Under the events division, first thing that kind of stands out, for the month of May, they had 62 events, and they estimate 21,720 guests at those events in the month of May. Of course, we have the Farmers Market that's doing very well here, averaging 35 vendors per week on Saturday mornings. We're estimating around 500 guests in attendance for that event, and that will continue through November. So if you haven't had a chance to make it out, certainly a lot of variety and a fun thing to come see. Moving on, continued playing for Moonlight Movies, which started on June 7th. That's been a hit also. We average about 800 persons in attendance for that, and that's just in the amphitheater to watch the movie. We have a lot of people in the park at the same time also. But a very popular event. And of course, Freedom Blast, which the mayor alluded to. We feel that was probably our best attended crowd, not only here in the park, but in the surrounding areas and the streets and other viewing areas for fireworks. We dodged the rain that night, had a brief shower, and I think it was just enough to cool it off to where even more people came out, especially once the sun went down. But very, very good event this year. The next heading that you'll see is upcoming events. We always list what we have coming up basically through the end of the year, and then even a few into January. We end with our current projects. A couple of the more notable ones there are the Center for the Arts renovation and Kids Planet Master Plan, which we're currently working on. And finally, we conclude the report with our mission statement. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Council?
Sounds great. Sounds like everybody's been very busy.
That was my question. How do y'all keep up with all that?
We have a wonderful staff.
We agree.
Mr. Watson, interesting phenomenon. I guess that it's happened without me noticing it because I had literally been in the park the last several years. But another function kept me away until shortly before the fireworks last time. And as I walked from my home down this direction, I was amazed at the number of people that were filling parking lots from First Baptist Church all the way into town.
Yeah.
Is there? I don't know that there's any way that we actually can calculate that that number, but in terms of working with the police department and the others about how we get those folks in and out of town, is that something that we need to continue to consider? Obviously, I guess as this event grows.
Absolutely. Well, at our planning meetings, which literally start the week or the month after the event is over for next year, public safety is invited to that. They see a lot of that as we are communicating between the park and where the fireworks are actually shot from in Victor, and their routes traveling down there and back. So they will evaluate that as far as, I'm not sure how far the radius goes out, but they have a good feel on where traffic congestion is. If there are certain spots, certain parking lots that are emptying out at a rate that's going to cause congestion here around in the immediate area of the park, they'll put more resources there to direct traffic to make sure that flow is going. But it's certainly on our radar, certainly something that they have resources that are monitoring that and kind of looking, listening to the radar and trying to plan for it the best that we can.
Others? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Mr. Greer, it's time for the administrator's report, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. At least I not be the only one that doesn't applaud family. The Freedom Blast event, we certainly have to give recognition to our members of our recreation department, members of our event staff. This is a year-long planning process. And what is important for us to know is while we may bring nearly 20,000 or so residents and visitors to downtown for this event, as you can see from their monthly report, they plan this all year long, and then they do everything else that we do to provide recreation facilities and programming to our community, to our adults and our young people and visitors here in our community as well. We're very, very proud of this group of folks. They do an excellent job for us, and I know that you feel the same way. The purpose of us bringing our monthly reports to you on a periodic basis is for us to also inquire of you if you have recommendations or suggestions of ways that we can improve that information. We're certainly always looking to make sure that we are providing you good, timely, useful information in those monthly reports. If you do have suggestions, recommendations on things that we could add or something that you may think is a little aged at this point and maybe we need to freshen that up a bit, we're very, very open to that. This is a new format for us and how we're looking at some of those reports. We give a lot of flexibility to our respective departments and how they prepare their reports. But again, we just simply want to make sure that it's giving you the information that you need, it's keeping you informed, and we certainly use it as a tool also to inform our community. These reports are posted on our website as part of your agenda, and we're doing our best to keep the community involved, not only of what we have accomplished, but those things that are coming up as well. So we want to always make those improvements. Please let us know how we can continue to do that. Christmas in July may be an appropriate comment. Also, an event that our folks are participating in from our Parks and Recreation Department. You will notice on Wade Hampton Boulevard that we are testing some new banners and Christmas decorations out in that area, and we're doing that test simply because those are brand new lights, brand new fixtures, brand new poles that are there. We've never used those for any of our Christmas decorations in the past. They have a different layout, a different height than what we've used in the past as well. So we needed to get in and do some testing in that area. So as you go by, you'll see 2 or 3 or 4 banners, a couple of selections of Christmas decorations as well. We're going to put those up, evaluate them, look at them at night, see how the lighting works on them with the new LED lighting. And then once we've concluded that test, we'll be pulling those back down. We'll have an opportunity to take some photos and those types of things to make sure as we prepare for Christmas 2018 that we're moving in the right direction. So take a look at that. But if you get a phone call or someone wants to know why we're decorating for Christmas in July, it's simply because we're testing the market to see what's going to be best for us to use in that environment. We also want to make you aware that we are moving forward with our test pilot project in Brushy Meadows for recycling. We have distributed the containers in that area. We've been able to put out information to all the residents in that area. We're already getting some feedback from folks. We actually start collecting next week, and we will do an every other week collection over a 6-month period, as we've indicated prior. But we look forward to receiving that input. Councilmember Albert is helping us tremendously in getting the word out in that community. And so we will look for ways to improve that. It isn't a go out and do it and make no modifications until we've completed the pilot. We will continue to monitor and adjust that as we work through this pilot. If it is a success for us going forward, then we will expand that as we go into 2019, and then ultimately council will make a decision whether or not that's a program that we would desire to use citywide or expand it into other neighborhoods as we would move forward. So I do ask that you kind of keep your ear to the ground. If you're getting feedback from folks, please share that with us because we want to make sure that we're getting off on the right foot as we do that pilot on recycling in that community. I wanted to give you a bit of an update relative to some of our downtown construction projects. You can see that much of the construction crews that were doing work with CPW, they've completed much of their work, not all of their work, but they've been able to move most of that equipment back out of the downtown area. They were out today picking up cones and barricades and those types of things. So that project is coming to a conclusion on the utility side. They will work with us for some tie-ins as we get into some of our larger construction on Trade Street on into next year and beyond. But we have completed the paving of the parking lot behind the depot building. We have completed the resurfacing of the parking lot at the depot building. We've completed the resurfacing of the parking lot off of School Street, and we have completed the paving of the alleyways that run on both sides of the alleys adjacent to Trade Street. That work is complete from major construction. We do still have some installation of lighting that needs to take place in that area. We also have some landscaping that we will come in and get that work completed. Our construction crews are not on site this week. They will remobilize coming in next week with much of that work to be completed when they're back in next week. Our intent in that was to prepare that area so that as we move toward construction of our major streetscape project, that parking is available for folks as we begin that process. Also, it enables us to encourage our businesses on Trade Street to begin using the rear entrances of those buildings. As you are aware, we've offered some grants, and we are getting good utilization of applications for those grant programs. We have now awarded 2 of those, and we have, I think, 10 more or 8 more in consideration as we continue to move forward with that program as well. We are finalizing the review of the construction documents, the construction drawings on the streetscape project. As we complete that, we will marry those documents along with our civil engineering drawings, and then that will enable us to prepare our bid documents. The project will then go to bid. Once we have completed the bid process and received those, we will be bringing the results of that back to council, looking for direction on how we'll proceed in awarding a bid for that. We envision that we will start construction on much of the areas outside of Trade Street, primarily being Main Street, Poinsett Street, Randall Street, Victoria Street, School Street, and Depot Street. We will start much of that work that will take place this fall in the downtown area. We will then, as best that we can, we will lighten on that as we go into the Christmas shopping season for our downtown retail businesses. And then we will come back much heavier after the first of the year in 2019. And we will complete the work on the outlying areas, as well as we will then mobilize onto Trade Street, doing first the section that is at the lower end from the railroad tracks up to Randall Street. We will do demo and then installation in that area. We then will move to the area between Randall Street and Victoria Street. We'll do demolition in that area, and then construction, and then we'll move from Victoria Street to Poinsett. So we will do Trade Street in 3 sections as we move forward in that project as well. I do remind all of us that there is information available on a regular basis, and that is at www.futuregreer.com. Not only is there the ability of anyone in the community that they can go to that site and they can register to receive regular email communications and updates, but we were also loading into that system all of our employees as well as our elected officials so that you are receiving those email notifications on a regular basis as well. So we will go ahead and make sure that that is preloaded. Even if you've already done that, we'll certainly recognize that so that you're not getting duplicate notifications, but we want to make sure that everyone within our organization is getting those notifications and staying informed about the progress of that work. So that is moving along and it is on schedule for us at this time. We do have some folks that will be attending the Municipal Association annual conference next week. I'll have some additional information for those who are attending that meeting. I'll have an email communication to you with some logistics about that. And last but not least, I would like to invite Mr. Reno Deaton to the podium. We wanted to provide some additional information to you this evening as a matter of update and information concerning the Abandoned Buildings Act. As you know, there's an agenda item later in your agenda that deals with that. And we thought it may be appropriate before we were receiving that information that we get a little bit of background and information about how that program works, what it means, and what we know about it moving forward. Mr. Deaton.
Mr. Riggers, thank you. Mayor, Council, good evening. Reno Deaton with the Greer Development Corporation. Pleasure to be here this evening. First, by way of background, as it pertains to the agenda item tonight, of course, you'll recall that we've announced a great project for downtown Greer, and that is Tribe 513 in Grace Church. Have acquired the former Mutual Home Store and the former D&B Ford building, and they'll be redeveloping that into a corporate headquarters for Tribe 513. A new pediatrician's office, and the Greer campus of Grace Church. Again, a phenomenal project for us. We're very thrilled about its progress and the way it's moving forward. Thrilled to have the opportunity to work with great people, and I'll recognize tonight, if you don't mind, Jeff Randolph was here tonight representing Grace Church, and Chris Hill representing Tribe 513. Just super people to work with. Also, by way of background, we are in the latter stages of negotiating a development agreement with respect to this project. There are some opportunities on this particular project, this particular parcel, for a win-win situation where there are some opportunities for the city to gain some advantages relative to adjacent development, as well as to provide some accommodations for this project to make this a really, really good project, not just for the development, but for the community and the citizens as well. That's in the latter stages of negotiation. What you've got on your agenda tonight is a request for acknowledgement of abandoned building status for a portion of that property. You may recall, in some instances in the past, we've had the opportunity to look at the Abandoned Buildings Tax Credit Program. That is an incentive given to folks who invest in properties that have been not used, not operational, at least 66% of which non-operational for the last 5 years. Again, so non-operational, 66% of that building, non-operational for the last 5 years. The incentive is a credit that can take one of two forms, either a credit as it pertains to South Carolina income tax or real property tax. And there are some different hurdles that you've got to jump to get one versus the other. The simplest, the most frequent, and the one that will be asked for in this particular situation is the credit as it pertains to South Carolina income tax, not the real property tax credit, so I can be specific. So that is on your agenda for this evening. Typically in the past, as you have evaluated the abandoned buildings opportunities that have come before you, you've typically conferred with the economic development attorney for the city of Greer just to make sure that the information that you have demonstrates that by definition of the statute, that the building is in fact abandoned. I must apologize to the City Council, certainly to Mr. Randolph. To this point, we've not yet had an opportunity to confer with the Economic Development Council to confirm that the property has been abandoned. I think that folks have got some documentation. I suspect that we'll move with that in pretty short order. But again, I do apologize to this point. We've not had a chance to confer with the city attorney to have them look at that documentation to make sure that we understand that we can reasonably agree that the building has in fact been abandoned. Again, I think that we'll get there. I just, to this point, unfortunately, not had the opportunity to do so. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about the abandoned building statute, the credit, and where we are with the project right now, if you'd like.
Mr. Dean, if I may ask as well, this would be a good opportunity to share some of the other tools that are available when we're looking to redevelop sites. This is one of those tools that may be available to a developer. Some of the others that you could mention that possibly could be available for this or other projects. Sure.
Wow. The short meeting has just gotten a lot longer as I get to expand upon our entire toolbox, but I'm happy to do so, Mr. Biggers. So depending upon the property, what it was used for previously, and what the intended use is in the future, there are a number of different opportunities to reduce the overall tax burden, to improve sort of the development potential for a piece of property. If it's a former retail facility that's been empty for some period of time, there are some provisions that allow for some tax credits to apply there. If it's a former textile mill, for example, there's some opportunities to apply some credits that would make it a much more favorable development opportunity. If the property is found in a low to moderate income tax census tract, there's some big incentives that would encourage redevelopment of that property and reduce developers' overall cost. We've recently applied for opportunity zone status here in Greer for 2 of our census tracts, to include the census tract that surrounds the Greer Mill and that which surrounds the industrial parks in sort of the BMW Velocity Park area of our community. And that's a program that provides for a vehicle for folks to take otherwise proceeds that would be subject to capital gains tax to reinvest them in funds that then invest in new economic development projects in our opportunity zones, to reduce the basis of their tax burden or to eliminate it depending upon the number of years in which those dollars are held in the fund and reinvested in the project. Beyond that, when we get to larger projects, obviously there are things like fee and low taxes agreements, multi-county industrial park, et cetera, the list goes on and on. For any project that we have the opportunity to look at, there are opportunities for us to look at ways to reduce the overall development burden without negatively impacting the revenue streams and the benefits that come back to the community. Thank you.
Mr. Deaton, I noticed in regards to new business and this subject that it requires one reading of a resolution, first and final reading of a resolution. Is that then followed by anything in ordinance, or is the resolution simply to identify the building as abandoned, or what is it that we are certifying during the resolution in that regard?
Yeah, and typically part of the reason that you like to confer with the economic development attorney on the request for abandoned buildings tax credit is there's a difference between whether or not you, by resolution or by ordinance, approve that status. By resolution, that is a path that leads you to the South Carolina income tax credit. By ordinance, that is a path that leads you to the real property tax credit. So again, typically, sort of working through your economic development attorney is helpful to make sure that you take the right path.
This is the first one of these we've done, the abandoned building?
No, sir. You might recall with respect to Piedmont Marketplace, we provided
I
abandoned
remember
building
doing
status.
something like that for them.
Yeah, the challenge for you, for any community considering abandoned building status is, in some instances, the nature of the abandonment, if you will, is intuitive. Piedmont Marketplace is a great example. I think I've been here a little better than 11 years, and it's been abandoned, completely empty it was better than that period of time. A little different situation here. Fortunately, we're in a position where our applicants will have some documentation for your economic development attorney to look at to demonstrate the status of abandonment. But again, typically that's a conference that you have with that council just to be comfortable and verify that you're moving forward in the appropriate way.
Yeah, the buildings in question now didn't appear to me. I mean, I didn't consider them abandoned buildings. I won't use the terminology I used when I communicated with you, but I just thought they were there was an opportunity for development. I never really considered them abandoned buildings. Now, there are some in that, above that I would. But,
yes, sir. And again, part of the reason I think that you tend to confer with your economic development attorney is the definition of the statute is that 66% of the building must be non-operational for a period of at least 5 years. We could probably debate that. Certainly there's documentation that we could look at. But again, getting some sort of opinion from your economic development attorney that reasonably the information that we have would support that is what you've relied on in the past. Whether you choose to do that again is certainly up to you as council.
so would it be prudent for us to vote on a resolution before we hear from that attorney?
I hate to put myself, Mr. Bettis, in a position where I'm making decisions for council. All I can do is I can apologize that we have not yet had a chance to confer with the city's economic development attorney to be able to give you some information, sort of a reasonable opinion as to whether or not this will qualify as abandoned in terms of the definition of the statute.
Can we do it contingent on the attorney's opinion?
Did you say that we will get more information in that regard this evening or not?
Yeah, you may. I think I've spoken to folks here, and they may have some information that to the effect as to whether or not they can support abandonment in your eyes. Again, I just have not had a chance to confer with the city's Economic Development Council with that information and have him or her provide some information to you in terms of whether or not that would qualify.
Let's reserve judgment for just a moment. Let's see where we go with this, and then we can discuss it at that point.
And just so that we're not trying to be evasive in any regard, please note that later in your agenda, in your executive session, one of the things that I need to spend some time talking with council tonight as a legal matter is to discuss economic development legal services. And so we've got some other issues to address relative to that, and it's part the reason that we are not prepared or been able to receive that final review and check off there. We're kind of in a limbo state of us moving forward because of some employment related issues with our current economic development firm and an attorney of that firm that is no longer with them. Yeah, so we just have to resolve our path forward in dealing with that issue. It is required for us to do that in executive session, and so we just kind of have this dilemma of this matter coming with us being at a point that we could not get an opinion by legal counsel prior to tonight's meeting.
Very good. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Council, with that, then we'll move to items of old business, the first of which is the second and final reading of ordinance number 22-2018. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by James D. Sutton and Pamela S. Thompson, located at 1749 Gibb Shoals Road and 1670 South Highway 14. And Dennis R. and Pam S. Thompson, located at 1755 Gibb Shoals Road, by 100% petitioning to establish a zoning classification of DRD for said property. Ms. McCormick, information in that regard, please, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'd like to just bring us back to property in question. There are 3 parcels located on the intersection of 14, Suber, and Gibb Shoals Road. Our site photographs. Since our first reading, we do have submitted, and after Planning Commission, a revised concept plan and statement of intent. The Planning Commission recommended, as you have seen in your minutes, that they they maintain a 12.5-foot buffer between 2 phases of the development. And that would be along this line here. And however, the developer is requesting to maintain 25 feet in that area. Planning Commission thought they were generously giving half of that property back so they can incorporate that into the open space, but the developer has discovered and found additional open space in other areas. They have 19.45 acres of open space in this 80-acre development, which is 24% open space. And that was one thing that the Planning Commission was concerned about, was adding more open space. From the previous plan, which I'll show you on the next screen, go back and forth. They added open space in this area. If you look on the other side, that makes me better. A little bit more open space here, and additional open space in the northern portion. And that is here. They added additional open space. Also more open space in this area, and then all along this creek they added more open space. They also plan to buffer the single-family residences that are currently off of Nichols Drive and the commercial and townhouse area. That was one thing the Planning Commission requested, and that is in this area. And so they have in spirit met all of the recommendations of the Planning Commission, and the developer is here if you'd like to hear from him this evening. That's all I have at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have any information as far as from the Highway Department as to any plans? I know we've had a couple of issues concerning the traffic and all, and about the condition of the road, etc. Do we have any information? Seems like I saw in Brushy Meadows where someone had posted something regarding to some work that was being done, planned to be done in the area, and I don't know where they got the information. So.
Yes, ma'am. There is a traffic study that is either complete or underway, and I'm sure that the developer can speak a little bit more eloquently about this than I can, but there are turning lanes recommended for portions of the project. There is restriping or a different plan planned for 14 at the main boulevard entrance to this development, and also turning lanes on Super Road. This development has no access to Gibb Shoals, and therefore no improvements were recommended on Gibb Shoals.
Okay, where is Gibb Shoals? Show me Gibb Shoals on that. Okay, that's Gibb Shoals. Okay. And so the other property is, well, what's that at that far end of the other? What road is that? Show me your roads.
This is 14.
Okay, 14. So the subdivision is going to be closer to 14?
Well, it's all the way. It'll be this is 14. It'll border all of Suber, and then this portion of Gibb Shoals. So you have 5 phases of development here, and I'll just break those down for you. You have the commercial portion at the front.
Yep, okay, commercial, yeah. I remember
and that's the main entrance. There's another side entrance here into that commercial portion. You have 2 phases of townhomes, 2 styles. One is in the blue and one is in the color. And then 2 single-family products. One is located here that has full access to this, and then this single-family portion only has access off of Suber and a pedestrian connection that's potentially going to be with a bridge across the creek there. That'll be left to a little bit more detailed engineering and permitting as we go to see if they can make that function.
So what's the total of the homes in subdivision? I know
400 units.
Okay, 400, that's what I thought. I knew some people were under the understanding of 1,100.
And where that may have come from is that on our planning commission agenda last month, we had a total of 1,100 units planned. That was across the entire city, including property that's already in the city or property that was to be annexed into the city. So in this general vicinity, there were 2 other projects located in this area, which will come before you at a later date. This was about 560 units in this total area, but then there were about 400 units in other places around the city.
Okay, within the same geographic location?
All over the city. There's some on Bruckman McClyman,
and everything else too. Yeah.
Abner Creek Road, and then some on Brushy Creek, which we'll hear later this
Yeah,
evening.
okay.
A total,
Yeah, I just
a total
wondered where
agenda.
I was just concerned about where the 1,100, information was coming from.
It was a total of all of the units on the agenda.
So just to be clear, just in this area, it was 400 and how many homes again?
The statement of intent for Set of Farms lists a maximum of 400 units. I believe you have like 198 and 196 townhomes, 198 single family, and then the additional units, the 560, came from the addition of 2 other properties that are located here. But those have not come back for second reading. You've seen them at first reading, but those are on hold for now.
Oh, okay, so there will be, because I know the first report I got was over 500. So there will be over 500 residences after the completion of that and the adjoining.
If everything is approved, yes, ma'am.
My big concern there, and I know traffic always seems to be a concern, but I'm concerned with the school situation. The schools in the Riverside District are already so overcrowded. I mean, we're talking about Woodland Elementary, which is right there, and we're talking about Riverside Middle and Riverside High. They're all just, basically overcrowded, and I know I saw something from one of the teachers there the other day and said, they just don't have enough classrooms, enough places to put them. So recently, or over the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so now, time goes by so fast, they have done away with the portables and brought in, the students into the school. So with the overcrowding, I'm just, concerned with the portables coming back, and with the space there, where would they put them,
We've had a detailed
Mr.
meeting.
Porrick, if we could, I'm going to go ahead, if we're going to continue this discussion, I ask that we have a motion to receive ordinance number 22-2018.
So moved.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that before we get too far along.
Okay.
We had a detailed meeting about that very issue because the developer is proposing a crosswalk from this phase of the development across Woodland Elementary. And the school district notes that students may be assigned to other schools other than Woodland, and they do have a plan for a new elementary school in this area within the next 5 years. And we anticipate a build out within 3 to 5 years. So you may have students from these assigned to another district to alleviate crowding not only at Woodland, but also maybe Brushy Creek Elementary.
Yeah, and Brushy Creek is what I'm trying to too. Yeah, they definitely need probably all 3 schools with someplace, maybe out 14 with 14 and growing out that way with Westmoreland and all in that general vicinity. Schools maybe to house all those. I mean, right now at Riverside Middle, you got kids coming in from down at Five Forks, coming in, and that's a good little ride from Five Forks area down to Riverside Middle. That's definitely presenting a problem for the schools and the teachers and classrooms. So
Yes, ma'am, and
schools are my main concern.
We keep abreast of what they're doing. We try to meet with them on a quarterly basis, and they come to all of our plan and advisory committee meetings, and we certainly communicate with the school district as much as we can.
Yeah.
Spartanburg District 5 as well, because we do have property in the city that affects their schools also.
Right. Yeah. I have been told that Rainbow County was usually in touch, with the developments.
Council, other questions or comments for Ms. McCormick? By show of hand, the owner of the property, developer of the property, whoever might want to speak in this regard or answer any questions, somebody here that might fill that role, would you care to come to the podium? If you will give us your name for the record, please, sir, and who you're associated with?
Yes, sir. Austin Everett. I'm with Blue Water Civil Design, the engineers for this development, and address is 718 Mounds Hill Road. That's Greenville.
Thank you, sir. Any additional information you want to give us before we open it up for maybe questions or comments?
No, not particularly. I'm here to just help answer any questions. I think Ms. Kelly did a fantastic job explaining and answering questions so far. So, just here to help in any way I can.
Council.
When do you plan to, do you have any idea? You maybe already know about the traffic study.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay. What, did it determine a problem? I'm sure not.
No, ma'am. It just has minor recommendations for things that we can improve internally, and then, as Kelly mentioned, some restriping on 14 to provide a left turn into that main entrance. But yeah, it didn't recommend like widening super or anything like that.
Nothing like that?
No, ma'am. And it was counts were taken while school was still in session, everything like that. So it was. It's actually been done twice now, because the first time we had a multifamily component associated with this, so they were thinking even more density in units. So they performed the study with that data, and then again now with this revised plan and everything. So we'd be happy to share that with you guys.
Was the traffic study done by Greenville County, or was it done by a private?
A third-party engineering company, yeah, that specializes in traffic.
Others? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it. Ms. McCormick, what was just refresh my memory quickly, the original design called for how many homes in this phase that we're looking at right now?
This is back to the second plan. The first plan had apartments all at the front, and then they reduced that. It's about the same number of units. They lost a couple when they added more open space.
Okay, so
you're still around 400.
Okay.
What you basically did was lose a few here in the middle.
Okay.
So Mr. McCormick, when we first saw the plan, it included the apartments. How many units total?
That was, let me pull that figure for you real quick. Okay. The original plan had 163 single-family, 97 townhomes, and 216 apartments. So you're around 500 units originally with just that simple plan. I'll be glad to pass along the very original. I don't have that on the screen.
So regardless of style, this is all single-family homes in this development now?
You have single-family attached and single-family detached.
It is single-family homes?
Correct.
Thank you.
What happened to the apartments? They took that away?
That was taken off the table.
Okay. So in the second phase down there where it's just black and white, that's homes. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And
So townhouses would be here in the blue and the pink, or blue and the red. This is all single-family. These are a little bit tighter lots, a little bit more dense than this area, but this is all traditional single-family. And this would be single-family attached or townhomes.
And I guess there's sidewalks on Suber and sidewalks on Gift Shows.
Sidewalks would be all planned everywhere, yes ma'am, internally and externally. They have a lot of pedestrian connectivity planned for this, and also to the adjacent developments to, I guess, your north. If those developments take off, there'll be a pedestrian connection here to those developments. So that way residents that live in this area can enjoy the commercial amenities without having to get in their vehicle and travel on Gift Shoals and Super.
Do you have any idea what the commercial will be? I mean...
Yes, ma'am. 100,000 square feet of commercial is planned, and originally the developer was seeking a grocery anchor, which is on that plan that you see. Mm-hmm. That did not come to fruition, so they reduced the size of it, and D.R. Horton is the potential developer. They're not a commercial developer. Okay. They would likely, as we heard from testimony at the Planning Commission, put that property for sale to a commercial builder.
So it seems like there's something, and I'm sorry, but my iPad, I can't pull the minutes up, or the agenda, excuse me, not the minutes, but the agenda. So wasn't there something to do with maybe a buffer between the townhomes and the commercial? I can't remember if they agreed to do that or said that wouldn't be needed or what.
Okay, the buffer area, it talks about the proposed development including 19.45 acres of common area with maximum buffering between all property lines. They have a 50-foot setback established on Highway 14 and 30 on East Suber and Gibbs Shoals. Internally, they will, I would assume, most likely plan a buffer in this area. There's a buffer shown there.
Yeah, okay.
And that would be to protect their residents from the commercial businesses.
Yeah, yeah.
Just like the
I feel
planning
that- I think
commission
that
was,
needs to be done. Yeah.
planning commission found it necessary to include a buffer here from the existing residences on Nichols Drive to make sure that they had protection, and the developer was certainly willing to comply with that.
Can you speak to, for the public, what the builder and developer's options would be if it was not annexed into the city?
They would not be receiving sewer services from Greer CPW. As such, they could seek sewer from another source if it were available. I do not know if that is even an option. Otherwise, they would be developing in the county. So large lots on septic tanks would most likely be the avenue of development for this property in that regard.
Thank you.
I think it's important to note, if that was residential development, because it's unincorporated area, it could have other uses other than residential.
It could, that's true.
Yes.
It could be industrial development, which doesn't
It could be
require-
industrial, it could be commercial, yes.
That's true. If it were residential, it doesn't, industrial sometimes doesn't require as much sewer capacity or any, that much water capacity as single-family homes, depending on the type of development that it is.
Yeah, I just wanted it to be stated, because I think a lot of people think when it comes to annexation, the questions that I received previously
Yes, ma'am.
in reference to it.
What is the zone for in the county?
It is currently zoned RS in the county, residential suburban. I believe that's right. Yes, sir, RS residential suburban. That requires about a 3/4 of an acre lot if they were to develop it.
What's the time frame on building? I mean,
We
is
heard
it all
from
going to be built at one time or different? I know they can't build everything at one time, but you know what I'm saying. Set up for year.
With current market conditions, they would probably anticipate a build out in 3 to 5 years, which is what we heard from the developer. I mean, it takes up probably a year for them to even get permits and get going. They've got a lot of wetlands to consider also.
Think we get a school in the way?
Pardon?
Think we could get a school in before it's complete?
Well, maybe.
Others? Questions, comments? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Due to my concern for the school, I have to say no.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, next item before us is the second and final reading of ordinance number 23-2018. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of properties owned by Lola M. Crawford, James Wright Sr., and James Wright Jr., located at 936 South Suba Road, 938 South Suba Road, and 942 South Suba Road by 100% petition, and to establish a zoning classification of RM1 for said property. Ms. McCormick?
We have a request to hold this case indefinitely until the applicant lets us know that they're ready to proceed. I believe they would like to close on the property before it is annexed into the city.
Council request of the staff and owner is that this matter be placed on hold. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions in that regard? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Final item of old business before us this evening is the second final reading of ordinance number 26-2018. This is an ordinance to amend Article 4, Stormwater Management Program, Sections 90 through 284, fees in the City of Greer Code of Ordinances. Any new or additional information in that regard?
Yes, sir. No additional information. Again, this is just removing the fee from the ordinance, indicating that the fee is established under the fee schedule the council adopts annually.
Entertain a motion to receive 26-2018.
So moved.
Second.
And a second. Any additional information required? Questions? Comments? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council will move to items of new business, the first of which is the first and final reading of resolution number 16-2018. In this regard, I am going to ask Mr. Randolph if he would go ahead and come forward to the podium, if he would, please. And Mr. Randolph, if you will identify yourself for the record. Council, we will hold on placing this matter under consideration until possibly we've gathered some more information in that regard. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Greer. I'm Jeff Randolph. I reside at 165 Darnell Lane in Tryon, North Carolina. Don't ask me why I'm that far away. I'm displaced right now. I'm here tonight as the business manager of Grace Church. Let me reiterate how excited we are to locate a permanent campus in downtown Greer. We are presently renting what I feel is like a portion of downtown Greer. We're in 4 buildings, but we are excited to be able to find a permanent campus in your downtown. We have a permanent campus in downtown Greenville. We're locating a permanent campus in downtown Anderson, so we like to be in downtowns. We have over 400 people attending in a pack in, pack out location now, and we know that with a permanent campus, it'll grow immediately. Let me also reiterate how grateful we are for the partnership the city has already given to us in the development agreement that we're talking about. It's just a pleasure to be able to work with people that also want to see things happen. So grateful for that. So Grace Church purchased 3 buildings owned by Mutual Home Store, Inc. We purchased that in the name of Greer Poinsett Properties, which is a for-profit entity. You might ask, why is a nonprofit seeking tax credits? But we did purchase it in the name of a for-profit entity, and we will keep those buildings on the tax records while we harvest those tax credits. The buildings, there are 6 buildings that were Mutual Home Stores. We purchased 3 of those buildings. We did not purchase all of them. That is purchased by Tribe and Parkside Pediatrics. The 3 buildings that we purchased, if you're standing in Poinsett, we purchased the D&D Ford building. We also purchased that old alleyway. We also purchased the old jewelry store, and then a portion of what was the Mutual Home Store. Okay, in my definition, we purchased buildings 6, 5, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, Tribe purchased, and we're not here on behalf of Tribe tonight. All right, so we purchased 3 buildings that totaled about 15,912 square feet to be exact. The owner of the building, and to my recollection, has acknowledged to Grace and to our legal tax representatives that both the D&D Ford building and the service building behind it and the jewelry store, which is to the right of the alley, were in fact abandoned. Those 2 stores, those 2 buildings make up 83% of what we purchased. We know that according to the ordinance, it's supposed to be 66%. Those are 83%. Even if we say that that 4th building, which was a portion of the Mutual Home Store business, was occupied, and there's still some question about that, or wasn't abandoned, we still believe that we meet the threshold of that. We also analyzed the utility usage of the buildings. The average electricity bill for the past 12 months for those 3 buildings was $56. So there wasn't a lot going on in those buildings if it was only $56 of electricity. I understand the need for council to review the appropriateness of the resolution. I understand the situation that's going on internally, so we understand that. We need you to be also comfortable with what we're doing. I've also got with me Chris Hill, who is representing Tribe, but also helps Grace Church on financial matters for the church, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Mr. Hill, do you want to add anything to that this evening, or be available for questions if something comes up in that regard?
Okay. And I can provide the information regarding utility usage as well as the document that we received from the owners of the building.
Okay.
I can provide that.
Council is just as a matter of consideration. Again, I'll not seek to place this as a matter of a vote at this particular point in time, but I do want to open the floor up in case there are questions either to Mr. Randolph or to Mr. Hill in regards to seeking more information about this as we move forward.
Well, it sounds like, according to what he said, they do qualify under the at least the bare minimum qualifications. I guess my question now is it the right thing for us to do to go ahead and vote on it without it being certified by our sources?
Mr. Driggers, will we have enough information following executive session that if this matter is held over, that we could take action following executive session?
I don't believe the discussion in executive session will be relevant to the request that they are making.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
But you did say 88%, right?
83%. That's
83%.
based on our calculation. That's assuming that the third building or a portion of that building that we purchased is just excluded. There are some questions that if the word abandonment, there's some definitions of abandonment, but we just said, let's just keep that one. We'll just put that into the total. 15,920 times 66% is X. We're more than X, so we qualify.
Mr. Randolph, given the circumstances and I guess some hesitancy that I sense, is there any time limit to this action or concern in regards to when the action is taken? I mean, sometimes there are dates that coincide that need to be met or time frames that need to be met. If it were such that this matter was held over to our next meeting, is that a concern in terms of the progress of the project?
It is not a concern to us, Mayor. We've already notified the state of South Carolina. There's certain things you have to do, and one of the things is we've already notified the state of South Carolina that we intend to pursue these, and we have to do certain other actions, this being one of them. So we've already put them on notice. If we start construction tomorrow, we're not ready to start construction. We're not as fast as Tribe. They need to get in quicker than we do. I don't think we're going to start construction demo until September, October, so we're fine. Hopefully we'll get through this, but certainly if it's a month delay or the next meeting, that's fine.
Certainly, knowing that property.
Now, if you want to go ahead and vote, I'm fine.
Yeah. Well,
I don't want to stop progress, but
I have no doubt that the number of 80+% is probably realistic. I know that building, the bulk of that property that y'all will acquire has been empty for many years, and so I've got no hesitancy about that. I guess I do have some angst about proceeding prior to gathering more information from our attorney and possibly our staff as we move forward, and that would be my only hesitation in not taking action tonight. Council, your pleasure in this regard?
What is the thinking behind the for-profit and then shifting to the non-profit? Is it a shift that you're making, or is it just for-profit during development?
Grace Church is a non-profit, but in this case, we're buying the D&D building is also a historic building, and so there's some tax credits. It's strictly a financial. We're trying to be good stewards of the money that we're given, and we want to pursue those. So what we'll do, we realize that keeping them on the tax books, we would typically, they would be off the tax books, we would not be paying property taxes, but for this period of time, we're looking at the cost-benefit analysis of capturing, harvesting those tax credits. Chris Hill does this as part of many things he does, so that's in pursuing this opportunity downtown. We felt like it was worthwhile. A fairly significant amount of money.
But long-term, you anticipate that you'll shift to?
Yeah, we'll shift it back at whatever, after we harvest those tax credits, which I guess is 5 years. Yeah, 5 years. And then we would then, Greer Poinsett Properties is a wholly owned subsidiary of Grace Church. So we'll harvest those tax credits and then pull it back in. So,
And make it nonprofit.
yes.
Is that what the state had in mind, you think?
Is that what?
When the state created this act, do you think they had that kind of action in mind?
I'm not sure what they had in mind. I'm assuming that they wanted. I'm assuming that they wanted people to buy abandoned buildings and
then take them
renovate
off the tax roll after a few years?
I can't really say what they had in mind.
Sound like a politician.
I would just say we're trying to do, we're just trying to be good stewards of money. We're blessed to.
So are we.
I understand.
Lord works in mysterious ways.
Yes, he did.
I understand.
So that was my second question. I was curious as to, there's an abandoned building, I think incentive through the state that allows you to grab tax dollars, but it's more of a long-term kind of return. So I understand.
Yeah, it is income tax. We're not applying for property tax exemption.
Right.
I mean, if we did not do this, we would just buy them in the name of Grace Church and they would be off the tax books immediately. So in that case, for the tax year 2018, we would not be paying taxes. So from the city standpoint, I think you're getting 5 years of taxes as opposed to not getting anything. Now, there's a bunch of other things that are going on. We're working with the city with regard to pedestrian access, and those are things that we want to do as a church. I mean, we want to be active in the downtown. We believe we're going to bring people here 7 days a week. We're not just a 1 day a week church. We're going to have people in that building, those buildings, 7 days a week who intend to shop. I think since we moved into downtown several years ago, there's 2 restaurants opened up on Sunday mornings because we've got 400 people downtown. So
It'd be good to get the buildings filled up too.
and we understand historic buildings. We own one historic building that's on the National Register in downtown Greenville. We just bought another one in downtown Anderson, old theater. So we are going to recreate those buildings into good buildings. We're going to add to the character of downtown. We want to be part of that.
Council, I will entertain a motion at your pleasure, depending on what comes before us first.
Mayor, if I may, I think your options are to make a motion and second the resolution as presented, or a motion to hold over the item until your next meeting. I think those would be your options.
Those are your 2 options. I'd make a motion to hold it over.
Second.
I have a motion and a second in that regard. Any other questions or information needed from either Mr. Randolph or Mr. Hill? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen, and we will see you on the 24th.
We'll be here.
Thank you. Next item before us this evening is the first reading of ordinance number 17-2018, an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Ty HUD Investments LLC and Victoria Interests LLC located at 3325 3331, 3337, Brushy Creek Road from OD Office and C2 Commercial to DRD Design. Mr. McMahon, you got information in that regard for us, please, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Ordinance 17-2018 is a rezoning request for 3 parcels located on Brushy Creek Road. The owners are requesting rezoning from OD Office District and C2 Commercial to DRD Design Review District. The purpose of this rezoning is to develop townhome community for 84 townhomes. Public hearing was held in May for a total of 84 units. I apologize. For a total of 68 units. Planning Commission approved that total for 68. They then again in June brought back the plan, requested an increase of 16 to a total of 84. Planning Commission voted to keep the number at the 68 with no more than 68 units. The developer is requesting for council to override the Planning Commission for a total of 76 units. A traffic study was completed after this went to Planning Commission, and they will have to install a turning lane as described in the statement of intent. This was the original plan here that showed 68. That was the one that came to Planning Commission in June that showed the 84, and I apologize, I do not have the one that shows 76, but it is in your packet and I have a copy here if you would like to see it. I believe the developer is here to speak to this request if you have any questions. That is all that I have at this time. We'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Where was the turn lane going to be? Inside the development or there on Brush Creek Road?
It should be on Brush Creek Road.
Yeah.
I believe it's...
Sir, if you'd like to come to the podium, if you would, just state your name and affiliation for matter of record.
Yes, sir. My name is Jay Martin. I'm with Harbor Engineering, and I'm here representing this to address the question on the table. Turn lane would be on Brushy Creek Road. It will be a left-hand turn lane, 100 feet long, which is 5 cars.
Mr. McMahon, in terms of our, under the DRD, prescribed density on this, we've gone from 68 to a request of 84 and then back to 76. Where does our density fall at 76 in regards to the units?
It was 8.7. It was originally, I believe, 9.6 with the 84 that went back in June.
Please.
Would you like the developer to talk about the increase from 68?
I think it'd be helpful.
I would love to talk about the increase. I wish from the start, when we presented this project as a whole, if you look at the 3 plans, the road layout hasn't changed or amended over time. What came across was several things that occurred. One was our ability to intercept and run Greer CPW sewer within the road system so that we wouldn't have an existing system and an adjacent system and kind of running 2 systems through, and it kind of cleans up the process, allows for easier maintenance of the existing right-of-way because it would fall within the road system rather than having to be mowed continuously. That and also what came into play was we went through a traffic study early on because we knew that was a situation that was very appropriate to the area. Even though it was not warranted or required by SCDOT, we willingly went into it and said, this is a road that has 9,600 annual average daily trips. We really need to take a look at the effect of the traffic. When we were going through that, what it did determine, and it did not change based off number of units, was that that we would need a turn lane. The technical length that was required is 62. The minimum that SCDOT allows is 100. So we'd have the left turn lane, and so we would be the only development within that stretch of road that has the adjacent turn lanes with it as well. What those opportunities afforded, and then there was a change in builder that is going to take down the lots, is it allowed for the opportunity to go to what is now 76. And I feel bad about it in the sense that we feel like we're just jumping around, and it really didn't go that direction. It wasn't about jumping around. It's just opportunity that came available after the first submittal, which was for 68. We believe that we are providing a large amount of open space. There is 40% of the lot will be open space to be used by the residences, so I'd like it to kind of be considered that way. It's just unfortunate it first came at 68 and is now at 76, if that makes sense. And I can answer any other questions about how that came about as well.
I do see it's broken down into zones. Is this development zones or just zones to identify different areas, or why have we got 3 zones listed on here?
We did it at 3 zones, and here's the reasoning behind why we had the 3 zones. This development, and going into DRD, and the size that we are, only requires a 12.5-foot buffer. Instead of using a 12.5-foot buffer, we wanted to go to a 25-foot buffer, which is typically reserved for a larger tract of land that is becoming a DRD. And quite honestly, the building setback is going to be about 30 feet or more within the development of the property. The 12.5 feet we set aside as a separate zone because that 12.5 feet along the adjacent borders is going to be undisturbed. There will not be grading within it. There will not be anything that occurs within that first 12.5. So we're fully protecting it, and that was the reason for phasing it and showing, or zoning it and showing that that was a zone, is an undisturbed area of the development. The other zone represents the remainder of the open space within the development. So it does include spaces between the buildings, but in the latest rendition, there's a large amount of space in the middle between those buildings that allows adequate space for pocket parks and that sort of thing, which the builder and the developer are very interested in having throughout the development, so that it's not just open space, but usable open space that the residences can take advantage of. And it also provides interconnection to the adjacent neighboring properties as well, which was very important to us in the zoning request.
I know back behind there is a Mitsubishi plant.
Yes.
With all their lights and noise at night and the train that goes through and all that. So I'm, visualizing a lot of noisy activity for the new tenants there.
Well, it is one of the opportunities, so to speak, of living there. What we do have is there are significant mature trees that grow between our project and the Mitsubishi plant and our project and the railway line, because technically there's enough space in there to have more than one rail line, but it's never going to come online. And so there's a large piece of it that has mature trees that's never going to be developed, and creates a good buffer between Mitsubishi and the project that we're looking at developing. But more importantly, what we have here is the ability for this project from a zoning standpoint and from a community standpoint to serve as a good step-down buffer between what is industrial now and will remain industrial, stepping down to a higher density residential, which is still low density. It's 8.7, it's under 9, and then stepping down to single-family residence is a perfect place for a step-down zoning in that sense.
I'm looking at the new plan and comparing it to the old plan. There doesn't appear to be any changes in the street layout or the overall concept. You were just able to comfortably work 14 more units into this design. It looks like in some places where originally there was shown 5 units, there's maybe 6 now.
It had gone to 16. This is 8 more units. And those 8 units, where it came about from was the width of the unit. And the previous builder was looking at 30-foot wide units, and these go down to 26. Was it 24, I believe? And we had provided at that time what the units look like. It is a different builder than Rock Bridge on Hammett's Bridge Road, but it's very similar architecture with Rock Bridge and Hammett's Bridge Road. The original builder was Rock Bridge from Hammett's Bridge Road, and the builder now would be Meritage.
Excuse me. So eight
Yeah,
units is all we've added. Okay.
Yes, it was an 8-unit increase. So it wasn't a significant. It allowed them. We really maintained the same amount of open space and those sorts of things. In fact, there was places where it increased because of setbacks from right of way and just how the math kind of works out. But the overall concept really stays exactly the same from where we have been. A couple of things I did want to make sure that we knew. We had met with Brushy Meadows. We met with the HOA board early on. That was back in April. It was not a called meeting. I think we met them in the clubhouse as they were inspecting some pool work being done. There were no real concerns about the project. The biggest concern there was again Henderson Gap Road, and we have literally no effect on Henderson Gap Road, which is one of the fortunate parts of the location of the development. There's a large number of users of Riverside High and Riverside Middle, but this is zoned for Greer High and Greer Middle, and therefore you don't have the traffic that's going to cut through Henderson Gap Road and alleviates that traffic pattern, which was the biggest concern. The second concern was an increase of traffic on the road, which is alleviated by what the traffic study did show, which is the need for a turn lane, which we will do. And we will also, we've already on our plan accounts for giving 33 foot of right-of-way on our side, so that you have a total of 66, so that when they decide in their infinite wisdom that Brushy Creek Road needs to be widened at the SCDOT level, that we have provided the right-of-way in order to do that.
You don't think the Mitsubishi, I mean, it's like a lit-up city at night, too, on its own, with the lights and the noise and getting that proximity to it.
I do not. I mean, at the end of the day, you'll have units that go in and...
The reason I say that, I live on Meadow Springs,
yes,
which is Brushy Creek, and here's Meadow Springs, and we get the noise
yes,
that distance from the Mitsubishi,
yes,
and we also get some of the lights and stuff.
Yes.
As well as from the church up there, too, so can't blame it all on Mitsubishi.
The builder does understand those concerns, and as he takes them down, the market analysis does show that it's capable of selling that unit in that location, and so they're willing to take that risk.
Make it more soundproof.
Could be.
I don't have a motion in this regard, do I?
Yes.
For the purpose of further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive ordinance number 17-2018.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second for continued discussion.
So the ordinance is just asking for the zoning classification. I noticed there's some, but where does the number of units come in? There's nothing in the ordinance about the number of units.
It's within the statement of intent.
Something in there about it coming up from 68 to be increased. Planning Commission.
It is Exhibit B.
It's the exhibit.
Maybe it's in it.
That comes as part of the ordinance?
Because it's DRD.
Okay.
So it's not voted on separately. I mean, like the number of units and.
Why did we say the planning commission rejected it?
This originally went to Planning Commission in May for the 68 units, and then came back to Planning Commission in June for the 86.
And we said no, why?
I believe they felt the number of units that were approved in May were more than enough with the road concerns and traffic concerns.
So they approved 68, denied 84, and the ordinance that we're considering tonight is 76.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So planning commission was not presented the 76, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Other questions, comments? Council, the ordinance before us this evening is a change to the DRD and a request from the developer for 76 units. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Well, I believe there's going to be a traffic concern with either number, so I don't really think 8 more houses makes a huge difference there because of it.
Mr. McMahon, just for information's sake, I noticed he talked about there being about 40% of green space in this development. I know in the last conversation we had about green space in the Subaru Road development, I think we were saying it was somewhere around 20%. Is there some kind of target number that we look for with DRD or some kind of number that makes it more palatable?
Just recently, Planning Commission has kind of gotten to the point where they kind of like what an R12 cluster or a cluster type development would be is 25% open space. That's kind of how they're gauging right now for the open space. But with DRD, it's kind of open to everyone kind of getting along and coming to an agreement on how much open space is needed.
Yeah, I was just curious how they're coming up with that. We like 25%. I mean, where is that? Who decides that? Is that just a planning commission preference, or?
It's in our LDR, land development regulation. For cluster developments, it requires the 25% open space.
Gotcha.
Kind of the background is that when you have those cluster developments, which we see zoned R12, and then they can do cluster R20 and do it as a cluster, they require 25% open space, and that feels like it's dense, and so that open space feels like it's enough. And when you have the DRD, the developer may be, in this case, they're requesting more than 25%, but sometimes it's much less, like in the 2 that we didn't have tonight, because they're working on increasing the amount of open space the planning commission wanted more.
So you're giving more open space than the planning commission had asked for, is that correct?
Yeah, we're much higher than a cluster development. We're at 40% when it would typically be 25%.
Open space is not a concern of the planning commission for this development because that number was so high.
Okay.
Thank you. Just curious.
Council, the first reading of ordinance number 17-2018. Any question in regards to what we're considering this evening? DRD with 76 units.
And Mayor, if I may, for clarification, this is contrary to what was approved by the Planning Commission. Requires a 2/3 vote. You have 6 voting members. You must have 4 affirmative votes for this ordinance to pass.
Council clear? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Clifford?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. Council will move to the first reading of ordinance number 25-2018, an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Rita C. and Nelson R. Green, trustees located at 851 Brockman McClyman Road, from RS Residential Suburban to DRD Design Review District. Ordinance 25-2018 is a rezoning request for a portion of a parcel located at the corner of Abner Creek Road and Brockman McClyman Road. The owner is requesting the rezoning from RS to DRD. The purpose for the rezoning is to develop a mixed-use community with 60 townhomes and 70 single-family residents. Mr. McMahon?
Yes, sir. The applicant has contacted staff on Monday morning after the agenda was posted. They are requesting to hold, they are working through a site change of this development, and they are requesting to hold this until possibly the next meeting.
Council, the request of staff would be that first reading of ordinance number 25-2018 be held over.
Make a motion.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any comments in that regard? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, we have the first reading of ordinance number 27-2018. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Ben Dillard III, located at 531 Abner Creek Road from PD, which is planned development, to R12. This ordinance is a rezoning request for a parcel located at 531 Abner Creek Road. The owner is requesting a rezoning from PD, which is planned development, to R12. The purpose of the rezoning is to develop a single-family residence subdivision. Mr. McMahon?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, ordinance 27-2018 is a rezoning request for a parcel located on Abner Creek Road. The owner is requesting to rezone this property from PD to R12 single-family residential. This here is the zoning map. This is the parcel in question. And that is all the information I have at this time. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Council, for the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second.
Refresh my memory, Mr. McMahon. This parcel was originally part of the development that was going to be part of the Bass Pro project. Was that when this was annexed?
I believe this was back in 1995. One second, please. Yes, sir. It was annexed back in 1995 and zoned PD back in 1995.
All right.
That would have been prior to that project.
Yeah. Others?
So it's already in the city. And is that Abner Creek Road that runs here to the right of it?
Yes, that's right. That's Abner Creek.
And how many townhomes?
This is just to change the zoning. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just change the zoning. It's not planning for anything else now.
Well, they're building a single family.
They're building
Single
resident
family.
residence.
How many, do you know how many homes?
They haven't submitted any
They
plans
haven't
yet.
did anything.
They are just requesting to rezone the
Just
property.
asking to change it right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Others? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. First reading of ordinance number 28-2018, an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Hester Plus LLC located at 309 Pelham Street from R12 to OD. This ordinance is a rezoning request as well for a parcel located at 309 Pelham Road. Mr. McMahon, additional information in that regard?
Yes, sir. This is a rezoning request for a parcel located at 309 Pelham Street. The owner is requesting to rezone the property from R12 residential to OD office district. A public hearing was held on June 18th with the Planning Commission, and they recommended approval of this rezoning. This here is the parcel right over here. It is Main Street, Highway 14. Directly across this property here is zone C2 commercial. It is used as residential right now. It's used as rental property. And that is all the information that I have at this time. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do you have any idea what the business will be?
At this time, it previously was a laundromat. I believe it was in 2014. It ceased operation. And they are requesting just to put in some type of office within that building.
Last year, they also had come forth with a request for a special exception to allow a church to go into that facility. The owners have tried multiple times to use this as something that fits within the R12 zoning, but they haven't been successful. We denied a recommendation of a church because of parking concerns. Office is a little bit less busy than a church use would be.
When did that action take place?
The request for the church?
The last request for rezoning.
Oh, that was a special exception at Board of Zoning Appeals.
Oh, okay.
It was not a minimum
Okay.
zoning.
Okay.
It was just a special exception, but it was denied by the Board of Zoning Appeals. That was in early 2017.
Yeah, I know we recently had, the property on Pelham come up too, wasn't it, on Pelham?
Yes, ma'am, 304 Pelham. They brought forth a request to be rezoned to C3 commercial.
Yeah.
And what's at that site now?
It is,
304.
it's still residential there, I guess, rehabbing that property. The applicant for 304, when he brought it to us, he wanted to run residential and a garage out of the back to do auto repairs. Planning Commission did not recommend that request.
But as it sits, this building is the one that has the paved parking lot that looks like a laundromat. I mean, it's not actively being used as one, but it clearly has.
Yes, sir.
A business look. It would be very difficult to convert this into residential. It'd be a tear down.
They would have to tear it, yes, sir.
Right. Okay.
Does it have adequate space for parking to accommodate some type of business there now?
They have roughly 6 spaces right now at this site.
There's this.
A small office.
And I'm sorry, I missed, what did you say that's directly across from it, the other rectangle there?
That one just kind of sticks out there. I know it's red, it's kind of all unresidential. That's just property that was on C2, I believe, back in 1983. We were looking at that. Not sure how that happened back then, but it was zoned to C2.
There used
back
to be a
at that
little
time.
general store there, I think, at one time.
I believe that was the one there on the corner. I think it used to be an awning place back in the day, and then a church, I think, at one time.
What's the highest, and I say highest possible use, what does OD entail? Wouldn't allow for a small store of some kind, would it not? Okay.
It'd be mainly tax office, real estate type office, something that's probably going to just be open between 8 and 5 typically.
We have a motion on ordinance number 28-2018. Entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Griffin?
No.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, in executive session, we have one matter to discuss. I'll make a motion to proceed with gathering information for legal services.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for council to enter into executive session to discuss economic development legal services as allowed by state statute section 30-4-70A2.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker? Yes. Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, we stand in executive session. Council, I entertain a motion that we come out of executive session.
So moved. Second.
I'll need that stated as a motion, please.
I made a motion to come out of executive session. Second.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Any further action this evening, council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we allow the city administrator to retain the services of Michael Kaslarik's law firm.
And to negotiate terms if necessary.
And to negotiate terms if necessary.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second.
I didn't have him repeat
Any further discussion? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, we stand adjourned.